Have you ever stopped to think, like really think, about what's going on with stuff you buy and use every single day?
You mean beyond just the label or the price?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The container it comes in, the food itself, maybe even how your mood affects your skin. Seems unrelated, right?
Yeah, we usually just see the surface, don't we? The convenience, maybe the cost. But there's this whole hidden world of environmental stuff, health things, some really cool science.
Yeah.
That we just, don't often consider.
Totally. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We've gathered a whole bunch of sources, news reports, research findings, all pulled together by consumers.app. This gives us a snapshot from, June 13th, 2025. And we're going to dig into some surprising connections, some really practical insights. Might even change how you look at everyday things.
Sounds good. We're covering quite a range today. Everything from, like you said, packaging, what holds your takeout, to common foods like honey and bread. And then there's the stuff maybe we don't think about as much, like pesticides, and even that mind-body link with stress and skin health.
Okay, let's jump right in. First up, packaging. Specifically, that white foam stuff, polystyrene foam. We've got a headline here from the Portland Press-Herald. It says, a total ban on foam food containers in Maine. It's been delayed another 2 years. Right.
And that delay in Maine, it really points to this bigger global push away from polystyrene foam. The main reason, and the consumers.app research backs this up, is just huge environmental concern.
Okay, unpack that for us. Why is foam such a big environmental headache?
Well, it's a massive source of plastic pollution, especially microplastics. The thing is, it breaks down incredibly slowly. I mean, really slowly.
So it just sits there.
Yeah, it sits in landfills, or worse, it breaks up into tiny pieces. Those get into waterways, the ocean, everywhere, and wildlife. They mistake these little bits for food. It's a serious problem.
Doesn't really biodegrade on a human timescale then?
Not really, no. And there's a history there too. Some older foam production used chemicals that weren't great for the ozone layer, though that's less of an issue now. But the pollution problem, that's still huge.
Right. Okay, so if it's that bad for the environment, why would Maine or anywhere put the brakes on a ban?
That's where, the practical side bumps up against the ideal. The research points to economic, logistical challenges for businesses. Switching isn't simple.
It's not just finding a new box.
Exactly. It means finding new suppliers, maybe needing new equipment. And honestly, the alternatives often cost more, especially hitting small businesses hard. So that 2-year delay is basically giving them breathing room to figure out affordable, workable alternatives without, causing chaos.
Right. It's that balancing act. Policy goals versus real-world impact.
Definitely.
And you mentioned health before. There's a health angle too, right? Not just the planet.
That's right. There are concerns about polystyrene itself. It can release a chemical called styrene.
Styrene. Yeah, I've heard of that. Doesn't sound good.
Well, it's been classified as a possible human carcinogen. And you can be exposed, potentially, when you put hot or, greasy food in foam containers. The heat and fat can cause tiny amounts to leach out.
Into your food?
Potentially, yes. Studies suggest there could be links between long-term exposure and effects on the nervous system, maybe even a slightly higher cancer risk. So reducing its use is also seen as, a public health thing.
Okay, so what are the alternatives then? What can businesses switch to that's better?
Well, the sources mention things like biodegradable plastics, some made from cornstarch, for example. There's also bamboo products, recycled paper, basically materials designed to break down faster or made from renewable stuff.
And the research gets pretty specific, even into the science of these alternatives. I saw something about moisture affecting certain types of foam. Syntactic foams.
Yeah, that's interesting. Syntactic foams are often used in more specialized ways, like protecting sensitive gear, maybe underwater cables.
Okay.
And what that research found was that if these specific foams get wet for a long time, it can actually change how well they insulate or, how strong they are. It just shows that finding a perfect replacement isn't always easy. The new materials have to work reliably in all sorts of conditions.
Right. Real-world testing is key.
Yep.
And there was another science detail. Something about how the chemistry affects how foams behave. Rheological behavior.
Yes. Rheology is basically how a material flows or squishes under pressure. The type of surfactant, a chemical used in making the foam, affects things like how stiff it is or how well it bounces back. Different uses need different properties, so understanding that chemistry is super important for designing good alternatives, whether it's for a coffee cup or, building insulation.
So, pulling back a bit. Why should someone listening care about a ban delay in Maine?
Well, it's like a mini version of what's happening everywhere right now. trying to balance doing right by the environment, considering potential health stuff, but also facing the real economic hurdles businesses have. It makes you think about the choices available where you live and what goes into those decisions.
Good point. Okay, let's shift from the container to the contents. Let's talk honey. Common sweetener, ancient food, but allergies. We saw a headline from AOL asking, is it safe to eat honey if you're allergic to bees or pollen? Doctors explain.
Yeah, seems simple, but it has layers. Honey is generally safe, obviously, but it does contain tiny amounts of protein. Some from the pollen the bees collect, and some actually from the bees themselves, their secretions, enzymes.
Wait, from the bees themselves?
Mm-hmm. Studies have found protein bits in honey that could potentially react with the immune system, especially in people who are sensitive to pollen.
So the bees kind of mix the allergens right in while they're making it?
Sort of, yeah. They collect nectar and pollen, and through their whole process enzymes, regurgitation, tiny particles of pollen and bee proteins end up in the final honey. For most of us, totally insignificant. But for someone with a severe allergy, it's potentially a factor.
And we've been dealing with honey for ages, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. There are cave paintings, like 8,000 years old, showing people harvesting honey. It's a really long relationship all over the world.
Okay, so bottom line, allergic to bees, can you eat honey? What's the verdict?
The research suggests caution is wise. Because honey can have those bee proteins, there's a potential risk, especially for people with really severe bee sting allergies. Reactions to honey itself are rare, but the risk isn't zero.
And what if it's a pollen allergy?
That's maybe more direct because of the pollen in the honey. Doctors usually say, talk to your allergist, get tested. Some people wonder if heavily filtered honey has less pollen. Maybe, but it's not a guarantee. Best to get medical advice if you have pollen allergies.
Got it. But despite these potential issues for a few, honey is still widely enjoyed, has its own benefits.
Oh, yeah. It's mostly fructose and glucose, gives you energy about 43 calories a tablespoon. Great in baking. And that super long shelf life, that's because it has so little water.
And generally, the science says it's safe for most.
Yes, for the vast majority, allergic reactions are really uncommon. Even people with mild pollen allergies usually do fine. But again, severe allergies, especially to bees, you got to be careful. Talk to a doctor.
Okay, so useful info if you have allergies, for sure.
Yeah.
But even if not, it's kind of fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
How this everyday food carries these microscopic traces that could matter a lot to some people.
Definitely. Okay, let's stick with food staples. How about bread? We saw a headline from Real Simple via MSN.com that gets right into it. Sourdough versus whole wheat. Nutrition experts reveal which bread is healthier.
Ah, the big bread showdown. So what makes each one stand out health-wise?
Well, the big thing with sourdough is that fermentation. It uses wild yeast and specific bacteria, lactobacillus, not the usual commercial yeast. This process actually breaks down some flour components, potentially making it easier to digest for some people. Plus, it creates lactic acid.
And that does?
Two things, mainly. It might help lessen blood sugar spikes compared to other breads, and it gives sourdough that unique, tangy flavor and helps it last longer naturally.
So it's really how it's made that's different.
Exactly. That fermentation is crucial, especially for gut health. Those lactobacillus bacteria are good guys for your gut microbiome. Their activity can boost beneficial compounds called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs.
SCFAs.
What do? They're linked to a healthier gut environment, reducing inflammation, maybe even helping with metabolism. It's a hot area of research.
Okay, so that's sourdough's angle. What about good old whole wheat?
Fiber and nutrients, basically. Whole wheat flour keeps the entire grain kernel, the bran, the germ, everything, so it's packed with way more fiber, plus vitamins and minerals like magnesium and potassium compared to white bread.
And research supports this.
Yeah, there's ongoing research, like studies looking at sprouted whole wheat, suggesting ways to make those nutrients even more available to our bodies.
Any downsides to sourdough? Can it be less healthy in some ways?
Well, for a small number of people, those acids from fermentation can cause some digestive upset. And, depending on the recipe, some sourdoughs can be higher in salt or calories. It really varies.
Okay, back to whole wheat fiber. How much are we talking? Is it really significant?
It definitely adds up. A single slice might have around 2 grams of fiber. Considering we're supposed to get, 25 to 30 grams a day? A couple of slices makes a real dent. Plus, fiber helps with regularity and makes you feel full, which can help with managing weight.
Right. And you mentioned magnesium in whole wheat. Why is that important?
Oh, magnesium is crucial. It's involved in hundreds of processes in the body: muscle function, nerve function, blood sugar control, bone health. Getting enough is linked to lower risks of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis. Whole wheat is a decent source.
So this really shows there's no single healthiest bread, does it?
Pretty much. It depends on what you're looking for. Better digestion or gut health, maybe sourdough, need more fiber or minerals like magnesium. Whole wheat could be the way to go. Managing blood sugar, both might have benefits in different ways.
It definitely gives you more to chew on, pardon the pun, next time you're in the bread aisle.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about something less visible on our food. Pesticide residues. There was a headline from the Detroit Free Press on MSN.com mentioning a shopper's guide listing fruits and veggies with residues.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people worry about.
Yeah.
What are the main concerns with these residues?
The big one is potential human health risks from consuming small amounts over a long time. Regulations set limits, sure, but there are still questions about long-term exposure, especially to a mix of different chemicals. And it's not just us, it's a huge issue for the environment, too.
Right. How do pesticides affect the environment beyond just the food?
Oh, the impact is massive. They can contaminate soil, water, harming beneficial insects, fish, birds, you name it. They disrupt whole ecosystems. Research shows something staggering, like over 98% of insecticides and 95% of herbicides actually miss their target pests.
Wow, that much?
Yeah. And that leads to other problems like pests becoming resistant, needing stronger chemicals later, or losing biodiversity. Things like integrated pest management using a mix of strategies, not just chemicals, are really important ways to lessen that impact.
The research you looked at had some specific examples, right? Like in water.
Yes, studies from Spain found pesticide residues, things like ergorol and dichlorvos, in water near farms, sometimes at levels that could harm aquatic life. It makes you wonder about drinking water safety, too, potentially. It really highlights the need for good monitoring.
And I remember something about beeswax. That sounds unexpected.
It was surprising. Another study, also in Spain, found multiple pesticide residues, even some banned ones, in beeswax. It shows how persistent these chemicals are, getting into places you wouldn't think. And finding them in beeswax is bad news for bees, obviously. It adds to the stress on hives, impacting pollination, which we rely on.
Mm-hmm. And even in river mud.
River sediments, yeah. Using sensitive tests, they've found residues like terbutarin and dichlorvos stuck in the mud at the bottom of rivers. These can stay there a long time and affect the creatures living in or eating that sediment, potentially building up in the food chain.
Is there a particular worry about kids being exposed?
Yes, there is. A study in Brazil looked at agricultural areas and suggested potential risks for children exposed through food, water, even air. Kids' developing bodies can be more vulnerable, so it emphasizes why monitoring and reducing exposure, especially in farming regions, is so critical.
So we have regulators setting limits on residues. What makes their job difficult?
It's really complex. Regulations aren't the same everywhere globally, and actually enforcing them is tough. Plus, the science keeps evolving. We learn more about potential effects, so rules need to adapt. The research really stresses that consumer awareness and countries working together are key to improving safety.
Right. So this isn't about saying don't eat fruits and vegetables. They're essential.
Absolutely not.
It's more about understanding the whole system behind our food, right? The environmental side, the health questions, the role of regulation. It shows these hidden connections and consequences of how we grow things.
Exactly. And speaking of hidden connections, our final topic is fascinating. It's the link between your mental state and, believe it or not, your skin health. The headline from Mint put it simply, "Want glowing skin. Take care of your mental health."
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does stress, something in our heads, physically show up on our skin?
It's a very real biological link. The research is clear. Mental stress makes common skin issues like acne, psoriasis, eczema worse. Way worse sometimes.
How?
When you're stressed, your body pumps out stress hormones, especially cortisol. High cortisol messes with your skin's natural protective barrier, making it weaker, and it fuels inflammation all over your body, including your skin, so conditions flare up.
So it's literally hormones causing the problem.
It's a major pathway, yes. It's not just a feeling, it's physiology. And the research also connects broader life factors, your income, education, housing, feeling included socially, what they call social determinants of mental health.
How do they link to skin?
Well, struggling in those areas often leads to chronic stress and poorer mental health. And that stress, through cortisol and inflammation, then negatively impacts your skin. It's all interconnected.
There was a study you mentioned about teenagers with skin conditions.
Yeah, that really showed a tough cycle. Chronic skin conditions seriously impacted their mental health more: anxiety, depression, issues with socializing. And then the stress from those mental health struggles made their skin worse because of that hormone response. Vicious cycle.
Are specific mental health issues often seen alongside skin problems?
Yes, depression and anxiety are frequently found together with conditions like psoriasis and eczema. It becomes this loop. The skin causes distress, the distress worsens the skin.
So managing cortisol is key for skin then?
It's a huge factor. High cortisol weakens the skin barrier, can make skin oily, which fuels acne, and drives that inflammation. So, managing stress directly helps manage cortisol levels.
Which means taking care of your mind can actually make your skin look better.
That's exactly what the research suggests. Lowering stress lowers cortisol, reduces inflammation, helps your skin barrier stay strong. Techniques that boost your emotional well-being, they help stabilize hormones and calm inflammation, leading to better skin.
So what practical things can people actually do?
Well, focusing on stress reduction is number one. Things like meditation, yoga, regular exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep, the basics, but they matter. Also, seeking help like therapy or counseling if you're struggling with mental health is crucial. And then combining that with a good, consistent skincare routine that suits your skin type. It's a holistic approach.
Wow. That really drives home how connected everything is. Taking care of your mental health isn't just for your mind. It literally shows on your skin. A powerful reminder.
It really is. We've definitely covered a lot of interesting ground today.
We really have. From foam containers and the environment to the tiny details in honey and bread, the bigger picture of pesticides, and that surprising mind-skin connection.
And hopefully this deep dive, using those insights gathered by consumers.app from June 13th, 2025, helps you feel a bit more informed about the world around you, the products you use.
Yeah, thinking about those ripple effects, like a simple container ban delay, or how stress affects your skin. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other hidden links and complexities are out there in our everyday lives?
Definitely encourages looking a bit deeper than the surface.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
And if you found this useful or interesting, please do like, share, and subscribe to Consumers 360. We'll keep digging into these kinds of topics.
And maybe leave you with a question to ponder. As you go about your day to day, what's one everyday saying, maybe something you touched or ate, that you're now a little bit curious to deep dive into yourself?